Warrior on their Battle Cry. They're just 2-mana 3/2s that can get you off to an aggressive start.
Pretty decent. I will say that they have a lot less value with conditioning if that is to be the pan out of the game though. And I think every time we see Rush Warrior, it tends to go in one of two ways, where either both players hit a decent amount of draw and conditioning and it's back and forth trades, or one player hits all of the hand buffs and the greed, just like we saw with Surrender yesterday versus Give Please, and the other player gets a very aggressive start, and then it's all about the player who gets this type of opening with Watley, right? And a good chance to hit conditioning because you're on the coin, to parse out those resources and figure out at what point they are supposed to turn the corner and get that immense board presence.
Yeah, it was kind of a weird hand, right? Because Bumper Car, you know, it has some inherent anti-synergy with Watley because you want to draw it, and then you have the potential to draw the other mech. I was still kind of looking at it because you can just use it to curve out, but the more and more I see these pro players on the Rush Warrior, the more I realize it's not so much about curving out. If your hand tells you to do that and all you have is curve options, then sure, you will play them out. But we're seeing players going for a much more greedy strategy where they do prioritize that card draw, like we saw from Surrender yesterday, taking a convincing win over Give Please.
And already right off the bat, an interesting decision for Alutemu, because I think I went over in Mullet over a game of Letta where he did just skip athletic studies on 1 because he wanted to play Bumper Car on 2. It was a different matchup. But for Alutemu, he says he wants to potentially see what's in the box. If he gets Rakara, for example, that's a good curve option to go for. Doesn't hit it though, so just kind of banking that discount. And I like that he picks the Claw Machine because his hand is lacking value. As for Possessi, Claw Machine is also available, but his hand does not lack value. So I'm kind of looking at one of the 5-drop options, like Krasinov, to like smooth out his curve because he looks like he's going to go coin 5 into 5.
That is true. I'm kind of looking at the Sky Talon, actually. It has that synergy with Tent Trasher just to come down for essentially 0 mana, which is often not super impactful. But again, Krasinov, he just doesn't need that kind of card. He has plenty of ways to spend his mana. So I think just picking the cheapest option, as is often the case in Hearthstone, is just the best here.
Yeah, it does have that synergy with Tent Trasher like you were talking about, and the Parade Leader in hand. Maybe it's going to be a bit awkward for Possessi to use the discount and spend all his mana, but it's not a huge deal in the grand scheme of things. As you see, Alutemu is just going for armor up once again because he wants to get the run thack down as early as possible. That's the best way to corrupt his stage dive. But even if Possessi doesn't play anything, he has the Sword Eater.
Yeah, he at the very least just has decent curve options. Possessi needs to be worrying about hand space at this point, of course, and Bumper Car hurts that problem rather than remedies it, of course, because he's very much looking at going coin Watley, but maybe because of the hand space issues and fear of going too slowly, does he ever just end up on coin Tent Trasher? Maybe coin Emerald Sky Talon into the Tent Trasher?
Yeah, that's definitely an option that I'd be interested in because it's actually very hard for Alutemu to straight up kill the 5/5 at least without anything pre-developed on the board. I think maybe the difference maker is the fact that Possessi has seen an athletic studies played, so he's not necessarily sure what it is that Alutemu discount and didn't want to potentially waste his own rush. As it turns out, the Tent Trasher will get a better target here, and Possessi, without the conditioning, is in maybe no huge hurry to get the Watley out. He could even maybe save the coin for Tent Trasher a turn earlier.
For Troublemaker,
oh, yes, sorry, Troublemaker.
Yes, I mean, I fully agree. That's definitely one of the swing turns that you're looking for as Warrior. Very difficult to answer if you don't have a board, unless you have super buff Samuro, which will clear anything anyway. And so I agree. It's really just, well, I won't say it's just about whether or not you play the Emerald Sky Talon, because you could still go coin Watley. But that is a consideration here. Like, you get a tempo 1-2, 2-1, sorry, but it just dies straight up to the weapon. But then I guess they were going to want a weapon into the Tent Trasher if you rush in anyway. So just going for Sky Talon plus the Tent Trasher, I think makes sense to me.
Definitely a consideration. I think you can definitely put Alutemu in having a different way to kill the Sky Talon that's maybe even beneficial to him, such as the run thack, or just ways to get tokens in hand. So
true.
I don't mind holding on to the Sky Talon because he has Parade Leader in hand, and maybe it gets a bit more value, especially when Playmaker comes into the hand. But what a top deck for Alutemu. He's the first to get the Watley down and no hand space issues to worry about. But okay, some serious combo potential for Possessi, but once again, the hand space is an issue.
Yeah, it's just one big greed off at the moment. He could, of course, go Playmaker, Parade Leader, Coin Sky Talon, which would give him, a 4-1 and a 6-1 due to the double buff that comes from Parade Leader, Playmaker synergy. And I know that's not a good play. It doesn't set up for these huge combos, but it dumps some cards is the important factor there. Whereas at the moment, this Watley, it's just overdrawing him. He doesn't have enough hand space to play it out on curve, so he needs to do something else in addition to it, which is kind of why I liked the Emerald Sky Talon last turn as well, just to keep your hand economy low.
Feels like too many combo pieces to use all at once just to clear a Watley. I would be interested in something like Parade Leader, Sky Talon, Bumper Car maybe. He can get the tokens back, which still have some synergy with the Playmaker, but having to use the Parade Leader is always a little bit awkward. So even if it's like, I guess, Rukara Bumper Car?
Is he just sending out Rukara as cannon fodder?
Look at Alutemu's expression. He's like, huh? You serious, bro?
You okay, Posan? He still can't believe it. He's still just like, okay. And it is a weird play. That is a very, very strange line that I had not even considered there. You know, it does feed into the kind of overall theme of Possessi's hand, I will admit, because it's a hand that needs a little bit more time before it pops off. You don't just want to keep hero power passing because then you're going to run out of cards. You're going to, have too many cards in hand and not be able to go for the Watley at any point. But even then, he's going to have to pull off one hell of a combo to fight back against all of this that Alutemu can throw down.
And perhaps that's the main thinking behind holding on to Parade Leader because of that Samuro he has in hand. Although with the Rukara hitting the board, I guess nothing is too far out of range of Samuro with Parade Leader just yet, except the Ringmaster Watley, but he could really just coin out the Sky Talon if he wants to get the full clear. Possessi's line is super punished by conditioning on Alutemu's side, I will say, though. So it's quite lucky for him that Alutemu did not have a hand buff, instead gets the Rukara buff, which is significantly less pressure.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever actually seen this pan out where both players go for incredibly greedy lines. Like, nothing was played until turn 4, was it, with the Sword Eater? But neither player has conditioning, so they can't make value out of all that greed. It's going to be a very scrappy game from here on in, as Possessi letting rip with what is almost a board clear. Is going to need the Sky Talon as well if he wants to get the full clear on the Watley. But already, just using Samuro for Alutemu, he will be delighted at seeing this play from Possessi.
That's huge, and he will know very much that coin Troublemaker is a concern because Possessi has done nothing for so long and held onto the coin. He's used very inefficient board clears to deal with minimal threats from Alutemu, and so he has to be preparing for a big tempo swing of his own. And so playing around Troublemaker, you just kind of want to have minions that are above 3 HP stick to the board, which the Runthak can accomplish even after it trades into the Parade Leader.
Yeah, very true. Alutemu knows exactly what he is potentially walking into here. Double Tent Trasher buffed by 2 stage dives is massive. He has the ability to make them fairly cheap as well, with the both the Bump Car and the Crab Rider to tempo both of them out. It's looking like a very, very good hand, very high value hand from Alutemu. And for Possessi, the thinking now all of a sudden is this Troublemaker doesn't even look that good. If it doesn't get the 25% to kill Runthak, then your opponent buffs their hand again, you're still miles behind. He has to go for an alternate route.
And he is going to go digging with this stage dive. The thing is, even if it did hit the 25%, the 10 Trashers are 8-7. That's the perfect size to trade into a 6-8 from Possessi. It's his own 10 Trasher, but just out of reach of being able to coin it. And that means it's just Bumper Car plus Weapon Swing. That's the tokens, which have some synergy with Playmaker, but seem really weak without the Parade Leader. Possessi not having had the time, or rather hand space to play the Watley, it feels like it's really coming back to bite him.
Alutemu had plenty of options here, but on 8 mana with a very easy board clear, I do agree. Troublemaker is the likeliest way to just lock out the game, especially when you've already seen Samuro misses twice, which is, I would guess, a boon to Possessi. It gives him a little bit more ability to actually get a board clear on this Troublemaker, which is a 100% necessity if he wants any avenue back in the game.
Yeah, definitely. Not a huge consequence, I could say, because the 2-2 doesn't actually take good trades on the board right now, or at least the 2-1s that Possessi generate would have shored up any difference. But yeah, Possessi was holding on to the Sky Talents and the tokens to be able to go for a swing like this. Alutemu, without a playmaker of his own, will have somewhat of a rough time clearing this, but I think it's still possible with Parade Leader, Crab Rider, Tent Trasher, especially with the run tack buffs.
Agreed. And I think as well for Possessi, you should absolutely be tanking this with the weapon. Still a fair ways away from worrying about Alexstrasza, and it's just much more important when you haven't seen a big hand buff. You know, bringing down your Tent Trasher to 3 attack, you're much more vulnerable to Samuro at that point if Samuro had come off the stage dive. So keeping your minions as healthy as possible, very important. And now, while Alutemu went for the obvious play, the telegraphed play of just playing out the Troublemaker on the previous turn, now he has multiple options as to how he wants to fight back.
It's just a bit awkward because there's no value trade available on the Tent Trasher that I can see. He can still fit in 3 2-drops plus the Tent Trasher because he'll get discounts though. And potentially, yeah, just gonna send the smaller minions into the Tent Trashers. On Possessi's side instead. And imagine Alutemu still wants to play his own Tent Trasher though, but okay, just going for the Riders instead. That's interesting because it's kind of hard to get them cheapened post this turn.
That's true. He doesn't necessarily need to get them cheaper. Like if he just goes double Tent Trasher next turn, it's still pretty powerful. And this allows him to clear off the board entirely and keep a little bit more minion presence, I think.
Yeah, it means he also doesn't have to face tank the Playmaker. That was what I was looking at to happen. And then leave a 1-1 on the other side of the board. He still would have the mana as it happens to get down both 10 Trashers at once next turn, so not the end of the world. Yep. Having at least one of them in hand is very premium because he still hasn't seen Troublemaker from Possessi. And this looks like a board that's just begging for Troublemaker to come down, and Alutemu is like, I expected that if it does happen.
Possessi not even going for it though, building up for again these stronger swing turns with just the Watley right now. Looking to draw, like, Runthak is one of the only cards left now, actually, after he drew the bumper card. But I guess this ups the amount of card draw he has to the maximum.
Very passive line. I mean, he can kill the Parade Leader with the Coin Sword Eater, but he's just going to leave it up? Oh my goodness. Wow. I don't know how he comes back on board because there's no more Samuro. Even if Alutemu just goes double Tent Trasher, it's pretty much won the game, it feels like.
Yeah, even then felt like it was... was he just dead if he didn't kill the...
Alexstrasza?
Yeah, I was wondering if he might be dead to Alex, but 7 damage would have got down to 9, so he would have actually been alive against Alex if he'd killed the Parade Leader over the Crab Rider.
And he'd have a taunt on board.
Yeah.
But overall, just the Watley line by itself is shocking to me because it's very slow. I mean, I realized that he didn't really have a great opportunity to play it down earlier, but if Alutemu's hand has any resources, and Possessi had to be aware there was at least a dragon in hand because of the Watley played on Alutemu's side, then it's so tough for Possessi to clear this.
And I know it's not always a great indicator of missed tempo over the course of the game because Possessi did just draw a lot of cards last turn with the Watley, but just look at how many cards he has left in hand now that he's losing. This is always an indicator that something may have gone wrong if you just didn't find time to spend any of the mana on these cards. An earlier Watley, an earlier Troublemaker, as you were saying as well, just to get some of these aggressive cards, or expensive cards even, out of his hand, may have been a route to have a more likely victory. But with the way it's gone, Alutemu has just been in the lead right from the get-go and hasn't let hold of that once.
Yeah, ever since the Rakara came out for nothing but 2 damage on a Watley, right. I think Alutemu already knew that he was so far ahead. And that one turn was obviously the most difficult one for Possessi because he had so many resources he wanted to hold on to together for potential combo clearing. But it so happens that if Alutemu has his own Watley, Possessi's not able to clear the next board after the Samuro. And that's exactly what's happened here.
Indeed. And while, you know, Possessi, I'm sure, had some master plan that didn't come into actuality, you have to remember when you're playing this Rush Warrior, sometimes it's hard to forget, you are playing Hearthstone. Like, playing Rakara for 3 mana and just rushing into a terrible trade that leaves your opponent's minion alive. You might be setting up for something, but that's still just a bad play. It's a weak play overall. And it means that Possessi was so far behind. Again, right from the get-go, simply dead to Alex Straza here once the Ganag comes down. And that's going to be all she wrote. Alutemu just feeling like he was a lot more comfortable in that game throughout.
Yeah. Can go back to every small decision from Possessi. I'm willing to concede that the Sky Talon was probably an overall better pick than the Krastenov. But it maybe trapped Possessi into thinking that he needs to play the Sky Talon with the Parade Leader if it ever does come down. And that kind of led to him holding all these cards in hand, taking very slow turns, and not finding a window to get the Watley down. It's also just a very strange pan out because of the lack of conditionings, but even a single run back buff can make the difference when the playing field is even like that.
Yeah, and just the fact that if your passive line forces you to go for early Samuro, you have to start questioning things again, because Samuro is the swing tool that pulls you back into almost any game, especially if you're able to buff it up with run back / parade leader / conditioning, whatever. There's a multitude of ways to do so. And Possessi not able to do so in that game. So he is going to be able to queue his warrior once again, of course. Hopefully he can find more success with it in the next game and feel a little bit more confident overall. But for Alutemu, just once again, not really much you can say, looking very confident, looking very calm, and knowing exactly how to play the matchup. Possessi moving over to the Rogue now. However, I believe the pretty standard Miracle Rogue that we've been seeing from all of our players here in APAC a lot. And overall, I think that is in, with the Warrior out of the way, a good chance of picking up a win for Possessi.
That's right. It can queue into the Mirror potentially, or the Demon Hunter from Alutemu, which I still think Demon Hunter has at least a slight favorable in that matchup. But it's worth noting that Alutemu's list is a little bit different from what we're used to seeing. He's now got 2 Throwglaves in there instead of 1 Ethereal Aug Merchant. The notable difference from last week is that almost all the Demon Hunters have cut Ooze, expecting Control Warrior to fall out of the metagame, which is very much true in APAC.
Yes, I think that Throwglaive, as we've seen players get more adept at utilizing it, has proven to be a much more potent combo piece than we initially anticipated. If you can get a 0-mana Moarg to go alongside it, it can clear Token Druid boards, it can clear Rogue boards that often come off of the big field contact turns, just acting like a kind of budget version of Immolation Aura in a lot of the matchups where it's very important. So I definitely understand where Alutemu is coming from on that one. Aside from that, it looks like the very, very standard build of Rogue from Possessi. As you were saying, no Ogremancers in that list that some players have been going for, but it really is, I think, the Neophytes that are the more potent disruption tool available to Rogue, because going into those later turns, as we say time and again, board clears become harder, especially with Throwglaive. It's kind of worth pointing out the interaction there, where having to play 2 mana for every Throwglaive, it compounds quickly how much worse it is.
Right off the bat, Alutemu keeping the Eldrazi Warblades, which is not something I'm very used to seeing against Rogue, but it's worth noting that Warblades, if you do get, for example, Chaos Strike into the opening hand, is one of the few ways you can one-shot an Octobot without spell damage. As
True. No, that's a very, very good point. We've seen it a couple times already this weekend over the regions of Grandmasters. And even though Alutemu won't be finding an Octobot to kill, he'll still be, I think, fairly happy to see the Warblades, because he can go for killing the Mancrick, something of that caliber as well.
He says, having not seen a coin 2-drop from Possessi here, is just going to start cycling with the Chaos Strike. If it is Mancrick, he does still have like equip Eldrazi into an I-Beam type clear, and it still uses all of his mana. If there's one thing I learned from watching Alutemu on the Demon Hunter, it's that he wants to make sure his hand is as fluid as possible and not get trapped with cards that he would want to cycle at some point.
And that's exactly what he's got. This hand plays, I mean, it doesn't play itself, it's not that easy, but there's a pretty obvious curve. You know, if they develop any minions, you can go I-Beam, Philosophy, you could even then go Moarg plus a couple of Throglaives in order to kill off any slightly larger minions that may come down. Possessi, though, going for the double man-crick play, not a play that we see so much since the nerf, but still, against Demon Hunter, an incredibly powerful play if you can hit the man-crick consumed, which Possessi was not able to do.
Yeah, and that's why he specifically went for the order of replay the man-crick first before the Swindle, because he knows there's nothing he would rather do with that 1 mana, and he wants the chance of immediately pulling Enraged man-crick. Didn't quite get it. Of course, it's not super likely with other spells like Wicked Stab, Shadow Step in the deck, but oh my goodness, what a top deck.
Premium top deck for Possessi there. Definitely think you're going for that. The Octobot plan can wait until after. And so, as always, we're looking for Divine Shield. And we're looking for Copy. If Possessi picked the options that I believe you usually would, he's got the best Golem you can get on 5 mana versus the OTK Demon Hunter.
Yeah, that is a way to just solo the matchup because it's so hard for Demon Hunter to actually clear on curve. And if even one of the Golem sticks, whether or not it has Divine Shield, if you have Shadow Step, Tenwu, just play that back to back. And oftentimes Demon Hunter has expended so many resources trying to soften them up that they've run out of ways to clear the second round. And Alutemu has so little card draw at the moment. And you don't particularly want to cycle the Thalnos on this because he has alternate ways of clearing it. I'd expect just the hero power swing because the Throglaive looks a little too premium with all of these spell damage minions. But the Tempo Moarg comes down as well. Very interesting.
I like this a lot. Again, Alutemu realizing that the next turn is extremely telegraphed. If it's just the straight-up Golem, then even if there are damaging spells in the deck, Possessi's not going to want to play them on the following turn. It means that Possessi is put in a really tough situation where he can play the Golem, but what if there's just a bump plus Immolation Aura and it just effectively deals with it, maybe with a bit of extra spell damage as well. But then if he doesn't go for that, is he going Octobot Brain Freeze? Like, that is orders of magnitude less damage than that you're putting on the board.
It's huge that Alutemu plays the Moarg into a specific disruption turn. It takes a very high caliber of player to recognize when Tempo Moarg is at its strongest and won't backfire on you, but this is absolutely one of those situations. He knows Possessi would hardly ever take Rush if it were a keyword, or the deal 3 damage, because Demon Hunter is meant to be the reactive deck most of the time. So by being proactive here, creates this dilemma for Possessi, and Possessi is not going to take the bait. To be fair, it is still not the easiest proposition to clear these, even with an Immolation Aura, like you said, because it kills off the spell damage in the middle, and then there's the Divine Shields to worry about. But at least Alutemu has picked up some card draw now in the perfect position.
Yeah, that is exactly what you are looking for. Illidari Studies as well probably want to hold off on that for a turn because it could, it of course, can hit Skull, which you want to wait for a little while to do. Alutemu, I think potentially even considering a second Moarg here, where he could, of course, bump the Thalnos, attack with the weapon, and then Throglaives will deal, you know, well enough a piece to deal with both these 5/5s. And Alutemu, while his Moargs are very susceptible to removal spells on the other side, would put him well in the lead. And once again, if Jandice wants to be played on turn 6, it becomes really hard for Possessi again.
That's true. There's so many different ways to approach this. Worth noting that with that line, he would have to swing into a Divine Shield and so take the full 5 damage without getting any lifesteal. That's probably fine in the grand scheme of things, though. Alutemu gonna start with Spectral Sight, looking for a better way to deal with this. Although, yeah, starting with Throglaive here is still an ability to fully clear after the Thalnos goes into Divine Shield. Or the Moarg, okay.
Yeah, this is the only way that actually clears it, right? Otherwise, it would only do 4 after you trade in with the...
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
The Thalnos. And it's an interesting line because it keeps more Moargs in hand, which is, of course, important for healing as well as the combo. They're much often better used as not tempo pieces. And to be fair to Alutemu, if Possessi does just want to go with the on-curve play of Jandice, it's still scary. There's still a Moarg in play. You kind of expect that whatever you play is just going to be immediately wiped up.
So I kind of favor the idea of deviating here. He can go digging with Secret Passage for even just little ping effects like Guardian Og Merchant feels like a much cleaner way to deal with this board. He's very scared of Skull coming down, but at least he can play Jandice after that and have it be reasonably safe. Could also be a field contact turn if he likes. With a minimal Foxy Fraud Brain Freeze into the Moarg, but I do think it gets a lot better than that. So he is going to go for the passage, looking for Og Merchant.
Really doesn't have much time left though. It's time to get rolling right now with this turn. Picking up the Cult Neophyte is not bad at all. Just being able to go Dagger plus Neophyte is still a strong turn to try and disrupt, even though it could still be Skull off the top, just make things more awkward for Alutemu on this following turn.
And that super slow turn from Possessi is definitely what Alutemu planned for when he played that 4-6 Moarg, buying himself time, but currently doesn't have any guaranteed card draw. Studies not playable with Skull because of the Cult Neophyte. So this turn is definitely awkward.
Yeah, you can always just start with bump Thalnos into the Neophyte, and then if you do hit Skull, I think you probably just play that and don't worry about hero powering down the Cult Neophyte. And then if you miss, you could still go with one Illidari Studies. I don't know, that's where things get a little bit more complicated.
Yeah. So off of Studies, barring Skull, there's still a few decent outcomes here. Even like a Kurtrus would be a pretty decent play to give him board presence and the full clear. I don't think he particularly wants to use a Fellscream Blast to deal with this because it's really only the Neophyte that's a threatening minion here. He could end up on hero power too. Because he has the second Studies, I wouldn't begrudge him starting with one because having both in hand is probably going to be too slow for the next turn.
It's probably true, but what if you play Illidari Studies and you hit Skull? Like, then do you not pick it because you're afraid you won't be able to outcast it? It's so tricky, and because of that, definitely do not begrudge Alutemu going for the line of just holding both of them back. You can play both of them next turn, have 2 chances at Skull, as well as the natural draw off the top. Very high chance of finding some form of card draw on the following turn, if not the Skull.
Praying that there isn't second Neophyte, and there isn't.
True.
But next best thing is huge board development, which Possessi absolutely is going for here. Gubarashi!
Oh,
His Og Merchant!
Yeah, that's sick. Sign me right up.
Yeah, as long as he puts the illusion on the teacher's pet, that becomes a 5/7 Divine Shield that can get even bigger.
Yeah, the other 5 attack Divine Shields didn't work. Maybe this one can. Wow, interesting.
Hey, I guess he can still proc the damage later on, right? Front-loading the Og Merchant is not necessarily good because he's not likely to proc his own Divine Shield and damage it again the next turn, so it only gets up to 5 either way, as long as he has that 1 mana allocated. But Alutemu saved up the Studies for this. 2 chances at hitting Skull.
Dreadlord's Bite is interesting because it is a Jandice board, so one of them is going to die. But at the same time, you're just then buffing the Gubarashi. I guess you just take it anyway. I don't see what the others are doing. Kurtrus, if you believe that the Teacher's Pet is the illusion version, at least clears 2 minions off, but that's still 3 mana you've spent.
Yeah, it's super expensive. And because the Outcast gets cancelled if he plays the other Illidari Studies, Alutemu going to start with this, which means he doesn't have access to a potential Skull this turn. Going to go for a Fellscream clear instead, it looks like.
Yeah, it does look that way, huh?
With a Talented Arcanist, it is a full board clear, and it is 9 damage and healing.
Yeah, the question was just whether he plays...
Sorry, 18.
Big Moarg, Little Moarg, or Medium Moarg, and he decides that this one was just right as the 3/5 as opposed to the 2/4 or the 4/6, weirdly enough. I don't know, I kind of like the idea of just going for the biggest one, but I guess both die to a single Brain Freeze, so you may as well bait them out with the slightly less impactful one.
And here we go. Possessi able to discount his Octobot and pop off with a huge field contact turn.
Oh yeah.
He did manage to finish the rope turn a while ago, but honestly I was very scared whether he got the dagger attack through, so time to go, go, go. Looking for Neophyte at the end to top this off. Ideally, make it as hard as possible for Alutemu to clear all of these small minions coming forward. Okay, Mancrick.
Oh yeah. Yeah, well, Mancrick's wife the first, as Mancrick's wife the second shortly joins him. Like an episode of Jerry Springer.
If board space now becomes an issue, if he plays one more minion, that's the last one. I think it's worth it, though, just to get one more card draw through. Although he does have second contact, so I guess swing Redagger isn't the worst thing ever. Or just play the Thalnos as well.
That's an upgrade. Roughly.
Thalnos does have some value with the Wicked Stab he has in hand, especially since it's 0 cost.
Yeah, I think that, again, while it's kind of tempting to go with Wicked Stab just to spend the mana with, as you said, both Thalnos and the fact that it can upgrade to rank 3, worth holding on to it. Alutemu still starved for card draw. Both skulls buried deep down at the bottom of his deck. If he can get one now, then maybe we're talking. Immolation Aura is still a premium pickup, make no mistake. But his game plan needs a little bit of extra punch. This is not coming together yet.
Yeah, still lacking the big-time card draw, but it's huge that he can Immolation to clear everything but an Octobot and 2 Mancricks, and I don't think he should be dead to any breakpoints, realistically, unless the Octobot got all of the perfect discounts next turn. And then he can play the Raging Fell Screamer, fit in the hero power, puts Possessi to 17. So there's a world where if Il'gynoth and whatever he gets off of Chaos Strike is like an I-Beam or Fell Scream Blast, then he might just be able to deal a counter lethal.
That's true. That's very, very true. Definitely needs to be wary of the fact that, as always, you do not need the skull, but that is a spicy pickup here. 10 damage with Thalnos double Wicked Stab. 17, 18, not quite there yet, but surprisingly close.
Yeah, with Alex, it doesn't quite work either, right?
Oh yeah, good point.
16, it's like 21 with Alex, Thalnos, and 1 Wicked Stab, but the mana's just not there to get the full lethal, so it looks like Possessi's going to draw a bit through to second Neophyte, you'd have to assume, because he has lethal in hand for the next turn, almost certainly. What he's trying to do now is just make sure he doesn't die this turn.
No, that's a very good point. I was considering if you just go Alex on this turn because it's a very big threat, but you're absolutely right. It is more important to find that Neophyte to try and stop your opponent from hitting Skull into lethal on the following turn.
One Thief can also provide some disruption. Fireball, pick it up. But, okay, there's the Neophyte. That's huge.
Absolutely huge.
Now Alutemu, if he gets... the Chaos Strike will cost 3, and we do know he needs at least Il'gynoth and 1 spell to deal lethal, and I'm not sure the mana's there because the second Moarg costs 2, and the first draw is a whiff. Well,
still not even...
Skull.
Yeah, still not guaranteed. It's a 2 out of 3 at this point, but... again, if he does that, is there any way to just stay alive? Immolation Aura, I guess, would be decent, but he hits the high beam anyway off of the double jump. So still no Skull of Gul'dan.
Yeah, if he isn't clearing this board, there's no way anything's happening. And even if he does clear the board, there's just 21 burst damage plus dagger from Possessi next turn. We'd have to clear the board and heal. And I'm not seeing that happening without him completely throwing away his win condition. One of those unfortunate draws, both Skulls in the bottom 8 and both Illidari studies whiffing on Skull discoveries, even though Alutemu purposely held them back and floated 6 mana to give himself the best possible chance of getting a Skull.
Yeah, I think it's a big shame to see because I really, really liked the way that Alutemu piloted this game. I think his choice of when to go with the tempo Moargs was so spot on so as to disrupt his opponent's game plan. It's not going to work out here as I think we can see, what even is this, like 21 burst damage just with double Wicked Stab Fireball. And then not even factoring in the potential for Alex on top of that instead. But yeah, just a billion damage, way over lethal here for Possessi. And Alutemu, while we could talk about that keep of the Aldraki Warblades, which arguably was another card that isn't Skull, that isn't card draw. I still fully understand his point of view, and in any reasonable draw where you find Skull before the bottom 5 cards, I think his game plan there was absolutely spot on.
Yeah, the Warblades, aside from giving you the possibility to one-shot an Octobot, understandably deals with Cult Neophytes on curve if Possessi's hand is that dry, or Neophytes on curve, Foxy Frauds on curve, even Vanessa if you get to fit in the hero power. So I don't begrudge the keep whatsoever, but I am starting to see a pattern of how Possessi plays certain matchups where he does keep these cards that are not conventional, such as the Thorngrowth Sentries in the Token Druid Mirror, which you can see the understanding. It's to play around specifically Gibberling on the other side, but maybe it's not high rolly enough. I don't know. Some of these decks do rely on hitting the absolute nuts, but I do trust Alutemu to have done enough testing to decide that the Eldraki is better on average.
Once again, for the stakes of this game, if Alutemu wins, he will simply take the first place spot. He won't even be taking second place because he will move up to 17 points, overtake Blitzchung, and be guaranteed that top spot. So he will get a free win heading into the playoffs. Possessi still also with the potential of getting there, because if he wins, he will join Alutemu and Blitzchung on 16 points. Sorry. Then, of course, we get into awkward situations with tiebreakers, with most of these players, or all of them, having finished first or second already at this point. And so it's a big deal for our players to get that win, try and squeak up to the top and get their wins online.
Possessi going to queue up his own OTK Demon Hunter now, which does have the different build from Alutemu's, because we did see Alutemu with the double Throwglaves in there. Instead, Possessi has the double Ethereal Og Merchant still, which gives him a singular additional combo piece at the expense of a clearing tool. And if it is going to be the mirror that's queued up, I think you'd much rather have the Og Merchant than the Throwglaves, so Possessi does have the better end of the stick here.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Just going for the full combo version of the deck a little bit better. It's still surprising to me to see that Possessi has been such a fan of acrobatics. The more I see it in OTK Demon Hunter, the more I am just a fan of Spectral Sight. If I'm honest, the more controlled nature of the card draw does, I think, play more into the style of Demon Hunter. And also just 3 mana versus 2 is such a big deal when your mana is often so tight in these early turns, unless, you know, you get off Skull and they both cost 0 anyway. But as you said, it'll be very interesting to see how this match shakes out. Full mull, of course, from Alutemu, just looking for Skull in an outcastable position. Possessi probably just holding on to Illidari studies and getting rid of the rest as well.
I would agree. I'd make the argument that Acrobatics is actually the more controlled card between itself and Spectral Sight.
Okay.
Because you're almost never drawing the additional 2 off of Acrobatics. It's just the confidence that you can always get 2 draws no matter where it is in your hand at the expense of 1 mana, which I can understand why some players would go for that, but I do agree that the tightness of mana sometimes makes it such that you'd rather Spectral Sight even if you only draw 1. And Alutemu with the double big thumbs up because he's got the double skulls in an easy to outcast position.
Yeah, double jump, double skull, double thumbs up. That's the game plan here for Alutemu. And it's all just very, very simple. Admittedly, even as early as now, he does need to think about overdrawing and how that can play in, because his game plan, as it currently looks, is going to be straight up 5 mana skull, 6 mana skull, thanks to the reduction from Illidari studies. And so I wouldn't even be turning my nose up at the idea of just playing Immolation Aura there. But I guess he's thinking I will have mana to do so in the coming turns anyway.
Yeah, as long as his turn 5 is cleared and he has played the Illidari studies before then it all works out the same. I think this is just a slight optimization on the off chance that Possessi might tempo a minion there. His hand is super dry, and then the Immolation can clear something up. I do expect it to come down this turn, potentially, though. Another skull?
I think that's philosophy at this point, right? Like, philosophy, yeah. it's cheaper, and it's actually just a good card in case they're buried at the bottom of your deck.
There's a chance that Il'gynoth is buried at the bottom of the deck. It really is so hard to optimize because you don't know what's getting discounted off of Skull. Sometimes it's cards you don't want to dump, like Il'gynoth itself, or combo pieces. And if you don't hit the full combo, then you can't dump most of those cards. So This is ambitious, but I kind of like it. And it
Yeah.
means that he can tempo this first Moarg because it's eventually going to be in the way of outcasting the other skull.
Absolutely, yeah. The bar coming down, the immolation aura coming down, anything that isn't absolutely crucial to this combo is going to be thrown out the window. And, I mean, you know what? I'm on board. This is the kind of three-head gameplay that I personally like to employ. And so for Alutemu... Yeah, exactly. For Alutemu, it's... just looking super strong. Possessi on the other side, who we haven't been talking about all too much, admittedly, does have a more complicated state of affairs. Illidari studies when he has a hand that's very difficult to dump all of the cards to make room for outcast positioning. Realistically wants to be saved till turn 5, where he can go Illidari coin skull off of that. Or maybe he goes double Illidari into double jump on turn 5 so that he can then coin and play the skull if he draws it. There's a few ways to go about it, and it's pretty tough to make sure you are able to get the skull in play.
Indeed. Oh no. It's still technically playable from the left side.
Oh, yo,
But
yo.
it takes a very long time to do that.
Yeah.
I'd have to imagine there's no more room for hero powers for Possessi here. It's going to be like swing, re-equip Eldraki, potentially play philosophy as well. Yeah, I like this.
I mean, I guess admittedly, all the cards he has in his hand are actually dumpable, and it doesn't necessarily take that much mana. It's just because there's a lot of them that look so hard.
And going for the Eldraki this turn still leaves him the flexibility of starting Illidari Studies next turn, and if he hits Skull off of that, and I think he would happily play it, and if not, just dump the other cards. But here we go from Alutemu. He took a long time last turn deciding whether he wanted to dump the Morg, and honestly, I was on board for expanding one because the hand space does become an issue. It gets scary if the other Morg is towards the bottom of your deck, but he's taken double Skull to kind of guaranteed hit the bottom of his deck. Is this an Everglide?
Ooh.
Alutemu has drawn so many cards and discounted some of them. Kinda into it.
I'm kind of into it as well. Alutemu is winning this game. Let's shake things up.
And you can start coin as well, because you don't really want to be top decking that. Yeah.
Oh, this is so sick. Alutemu's perfect game plan is just being glided away.
It does mean Alutemu still has 2 skulls he can draw, though, because one of them
True.
is covered. It's just kind of been put to near parity here. Like, yeah, 22 cards in deck apiece. Possessi skull, and he can dump it in with this spare mana. Oh my goodness! It's turned around in the blink of an eye.
I mean, obviously, Possessi could not have predicted this. It's an equal hand state that both players end up in, drawing 4 cards. But my goodness, this game has gone from disaster town to Possessi just straight up winning.
Winning hard as well if Alutemu doesn't hit either of the remaining skulls. Oy, oy, oy. He's also just, like, in danger of breakpoints because of the early Warblades.
Just get absolutely glod.
Looted. Glidden. Glade? English is weird.
All are acceptable. It's a made-up language.
Demons?
Every time we see Glide in APAC, it's just the greatest card ever printed.
It's insane. I'm pretty sure it's only correctly played like 10% of the time we see it, but every time it's played, it still turns out to be absolutely insane.
Oh no.
I mean, that's bad, admittedly, but he does have a fair amount of the combo in hand. Like, if he gets 1 skull, 1 spectral sight, a little bit of card draw, and is able to hit, the Raging Fell Screamer or Talented Arcanist, he has most of the combo already.
That's true, but without discounts, the minimum turn it comes online is like 9. And that's assuming the Fell Screamer comes down off the next couple draws. It's just, it feels very slow compared to what Possessi's doing, and that's drawing his deck. And it's so rare you get to see Acrobatics draw the full 4. It might draw the full 4 here.
Very much could do.
I think it's worth drawing the full 4 here. Doesn't need these cards.
Sure. Still has a Moarg left in the deck, right? So he's not going to be dismantling his combo by going for this. Still has 2 Moargs left in his deck, actually, for that matter, because he copied and then shuffled them back in. So this is very much not necessary.
I hope he kills his Moarg, though. Yeah, he can definitely end with Immolation Aura, but there's just a little bit of a panic if you leave that up, because Alutemu on 1 more mana could just abuse that. I'm certain Possessi will just end either Immolation Aura or like I-beam his own guy, though, and Immolation is just more mana efficient.
Yeah, there you go. He knows all the tricks of the trade in the matchup to make sure that nothing can potentially go wrong. I like that he's keeping the Chaos Strike as well, because then he can go for even more damage when he goes for his combo.
Yeah, big optimization, even though he has a lot of breakpoints covered. Oh, runner. Alutemu skull into the other skull he discovered. Combo piece discounted, but no spell damage minion.
So next turn, he has 24 damage, assuming there's targets he can hit, which is actually not a guaranteed possibility at all.
Right, 3 targets on the other side, and then is very optimistic, and even then it's not the full 30.
Yeah, that's true. So realistically, looking at a couple more draws needed for this to work out, but for Possessi, he is getting...
hold on. Okay. There's the Aldraki Chaos Strike, and there's an I-beam to think about. I don't know if this isn't... I mean, Possessi's clearly done the math, but Alutemu is only on 23. I'm not sure. Could this have already been lethal?
He didn't have much mana, right, because he couldn't play the Moarg and the Talented Arcanist. So I-beam was only doing like 5 or 6 damage, so I think it was still a ways off.
But next turn...
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Uh-oh. Figure Alutemu would start double jump and evaluate from there, because I feel like he's got to dump Moargs not just to create hand space for the skull, but to heal up out of certain breakpoints as well. Not even sure if breakpoints are relevant. If Possessi has drawn the combo, then maybe it's just over 30 to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, if he gets I-beam off of here, then he could actually still outcast the skull by going for the Moarg Fellscream I-beam, which I think would probably still be correct. Getting the Spectral Sight, though, obviously means that it is impossible, but does still open up more card draw on the other side.
Okay, that is a spell damage minion he's picked up now. And so he does have access to 24 with 2 Moargs in that next turn. With 1 Fellscream Blast, it becomes lethal if there is another minion on board with the I-beam as well.
You kind of want to play it so that you can actually kill your Moarg, though, right?
Yeah.
Oh, no, okay, just going for this line.
Well, he still does keep 1 Fellscream, 1 I-beam, so I think Alutemu might have a good setup as well if he's not just dead this turn, but I feel like he's dead this turn.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's just that it felt like a slight misoptimization, like not starting with the Spectral Sight if you're going to go down that route. A little weird overall. But either way, on the other side, what are we even looking at now? 5, 10, 18. Yeah.
If you count 18 plus the weapon swing, then it's just lethal.
Indeedy. End with the Fellscream Blast. There it is.
Yeah, I-beam just a bait in this situation. Funny to see the 18 breakpoint be enough here, but honestly, this entire game was a story of the glide from Possessi. You can see Alutemu with the wins there. He was really looking to take this series down to guarantee himself a better seed into playoffs. But, I mean, with that opening hand, he could very much assume that he had the game up on lock, but man, that glide from Possessi was so clutch.
So clutch. And I'm sure Alutemu will be thinking if there's any way he could have optimized his chances there. But, you know, even picking an extra skull, I see smugly smirks there, picking up the second one. Picking an extra skull off the Illidari studies made his chances of finding another one after the glide came down even better, weirdly enough. And realistically, it was just a case of he drew the worst hand after glide. Possessi's hand played itself, he got the perfect skull positioning, was able to draw his entire deck, get the lethal. I do think that Alutemu probably gave himself the best shot, but Possessi, after starting 0-1 down, is now in with the potential of going all the way, taking down Alutemu in the first time that they have even faced each other this season, as we saw a little bit earlier. And all he has to get a win with now is that warrior that he lost with in the first game of the series.
And it's got some pretty decent matchups to queue into. Decidedly favorable against Rogue, against Demon Hunter. Still up for debate, I would say. I think Alutemu's list with the additional Throwglaive should be helping him in this matchup. But again, for Demon Hunter, it is very dependent on when they're able to use Immolation Aura, because that card is so key alongside things like Talented Arcanist and Moarg to build up boards that are even buffed by conditioning.
Well, let's see. For Possessi, it's looking like to me what would be in a lot of matchups a premium hand. Gnarg, Athletic Studies, Stage Dive, all cards you want to see against tempo decks. Are they strong enough against OTK Demon Hunter, or are you looking for something more specific?
I'm thinking this looks pretty strong other than the Crab Rider, like you said. Gnarg's just always your best turn 1 play no matter what, I find. And you're very likely to hit something to corrupt the Stage Dive, if not just whatever you get off the Athletic Studies itself. So I find that trying to curve out is just game plan A versus Demon Hunter, and I thought those cards would let him curve out pretty decently on average, but Possessi's thinking bigger.
Yeah, I am a little surprised to see that. Again, Possessi is not running an especially, or a deck that's teched at all, necessarily to deal with Demon Hunter, has neither Ogremancer nor Cult Neophyte, as we've seen varying amounts of both from different players here in Asia Pacific. And I think Stage Dive in particular is just a great way to apply more pressure early on. But at the same time, Possessi could make the argument pressure early on is not what you're looking for. You want to build up those greedy hands, get the big buffs with conditioning later on, which I think he full mulled for, but didn't hit. He's just got himself the curve hand here, which is good in some matchups, but I think Demon Hunter should be able to fairly handily deal with.
You could say if you don't have I-Beam/Chaos Strike here, I just get to stick a Parade Leader into Rakara and win the game. Possessi going for ETC instead, which is resistant to those cards, and so Alutemu was just going to try and soften up with the Warblades. It makes it such that Parade Leader is not really hitting any targets at the moment. Rakara only buffs 1 minion if she comes down, but Possessi could just say, I have 2 targets you want to swing into. If you don't have I-Beam, can't clear them both.
No, big fan of the Rakara here. The Tent Trasher, while tempting, does just continue to be a potent threat, even if there's not a board in play for Possessi. Alutemu with no Moargs in hand suffers in a couple of different ways because philosophies cannot be active. These Throwglaives do not quite do what he's hoping they would. And so is it Fell Scream Blast just to soften these up and kill the Rakara?
I don't think he's in any rush to kill the ETC here. Just hero power the Rakara and re-equip Aldraki seems decent because ETC is not actually pushing any additional damage. The Gnard's not a rush minion, and Alutemu's not played any minions for Possessi to rush into. So
True.
At the moment, ETC is just a 2-mana 2/3, and Alutemu can deal with it a bit later with Chaos Strike or Throwglaive, depending on what he gets. But that's the first real significant individual threat from Possessi now, the Tent Trasher. Threatening to push a lot of damage, but Skull, not the right timing.
Very much not. And so Alutemu could, of course, dig with the Chaos Strike to try and find Talented Arcanist, Moarg, more of these accompanying pieces that need to be coupled with his removal spells to actually clear any kind of significant board.
Just such an interesting hand because he kind of is just wanting Possessi to play minions and minions the next turn so he can dump these cards and get the Skull into position. But you're absolutely right that without Moarg, the removal doesn't actually kill minions that Possessi wants to play around this mana breakpoint, like second Tent Trasher and Runthak, for example. And he also needs Moarg so he can dump the philosophies.
And I know that this final point is not an especially in-depth one, but I do think it's worth mentioning that Alutemu is using the Throw-Glaives correctly here. You don't want to use them as a budget Holy Smite just to clear off one minion. You want to save up for these big combos where you find Moarg, clear off entire boards for like 3 or 4 mana, because that is always, or almost always, going to be necessary against Warrior with their very minion-dense hands.
But now comes a very interesting crossroads for Alutemu, because if he wants to, he can just dump everything left of the Skull this turn and still get most of this board cleared. If not all, because he gets to play 2 Throw-Glaives, but that would mean giving up both philosophies, which means that whatever Moargs are in his deck, that's it. You could still maybe discover a philosophy off of Illidari Studies, but that's not guaranteed. It's really dependent on what he thinks Possessi's next hand or next board development looks like, because if you use all of your clear there, and then they're going into redevelopment, it feels bad to play Skull, but this is also the window before coin Troublemaker. So I think there's still some strong argument to go for a clear.
I think it's tempting, but it just guts his hand too much. If he has to spend next turn going Skull after dumping his hand, it's very unlikely that he will get a potent enough hand to actually clear a Troublemaker once it comes down. And so by going for this line where he's a lot more passive, holding on to his resources, next turn with double jump, he has a shot at Skull, of course, 2 shots a shot at Spectral Sight as well. And, you know, even if he hits I-Beam, it's still not bad just to have an extra removal piece.
He's taking it slow, meaning that Alutemu is comfortable taking the control posture in the match, maybe because he's not seen Watley, maybe just holding out for whatever threats Possessi has currently, and then playing the Skull when he feels it's more realistic to get it outcast, or when he feels that he doesn't need to hold on to these removal pieces anymore. And with Possessi's current pan out of hand, it's going to work out pretty decent for Alutemu, because that's a low value conditioning and there's 0 card draw for Possessi, and kind of makes me think back to tossing the Studies and Stage Dive.
Yeah, very true. As Alutemu just rips Skull off the top, imagine needing the double jump. The last thing that Possessi wanted to see coming out of that hand. And with Il'gynoth as one of the reduced cards, Alutemu's a Moarg away from just winning the game.
That's insane. He absolutely is. The Moarg becomes 3 Moargs. Oh man. He just needs to dump some cards now, and I'd imagine 1 Throw-Glaive doesn't seem so useful here. The expensive one can just clear the Gunarg and be done with it.
It's kind of good to have this targeted removal as well, actually, isn't it? Because deliberately not killing these bumper cars is actually one of Alutemu's greatest assets at the moment, because it's so difficult to get them replayed with Playmaker, Parade Leader, buff anything up, and they just stay these incredibly low value threats that give Alutemu plenty of time to keep drawing towards his win con.
Definitely like the use of Throw-Glaive as a dumpable card over Fellscream Blast, because Fellscream goes with the combo, and also it potentially heals Alutemu, because we are getting in the slightly scary territory of Alex Lethals now, especially since Possessi has held on to the coin. So as long as Alutemu adds up damage on board, plus the weapon, plus 8, and stays above that total, then he should be in a very favorable spot to win the game as a whole. It's weird that he's got 0 spell damage though, so at the moment the Fellscream Blast is really not healing him for all that much.
Yeah, he could start with Illidari Studies. If he hits Skull, we could just see some dumping of the cards to make room for that with some of the cheaper options. If he hits I-Beam, you can just like play that. He does manage to hit the Skull, insta-slamming that. And so how do you make room for it? Now, Throw-Glaive, you could play on the 1-3, I suppose, or the 3-12, literally just to delete it from your hand and not have it come back, still clogging up a hand space until the end of the turn.
Really rough. I was thinking potentially even a Philosophy dump in case he needs the Throw-Glaive in hand, but he actually needs to dump 2 cards, and there's very little time.
Yep.
He's gotta go, 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 go. He's gotta heal.
Very much time to go. Needs to get some healing in play, or he is just going to be dead. Okay. Talented Arcanist. Double Talented Arcanist. Okay.
Even just 1 with Fellscream Blast is pretty good, right? He'll heal for 9. I think that keeps him alive. Oh
What?
He's just dead!
Did he not get it in?
Did he not?
He roped!
Oh,
Oh no!
He's just dead to Corn Alex! A blunder!
Oh, Alutemu. Just because I'm not going to see him make a blunder for the next 3 years, I'm going to take this opportunity to say, yes, Alutemu, that was a blunder, an uncharacteristic one at that. Had he had a couple more seconds, we know he would have fit in the the fell screen blast. We know he had committed to that line by playing out the talented Arcanist. Just an insane way for him to go out. And for Possessi, taking down one of your best mates in the scene in a fashion like that, you have to feel a little bit dirty. But still, he takes the win. He goes through to the finals for the second time in 3 weeks.
Possessi's just stone cold. He was laughing at the end there at Alutemu's misery, taking essentially a win that was not meant to be after taking a win off the back of a glide last game, which, you know, fair play to Possessi. He picked that for a reason. But this game, Possessi didn't do very much. It was Alutemu failing at solitaire, honestly. Just sinking in his chair. I can't blame him. He's still managing to have some good humor about it. And thankfully, this is a match where there's no relegation on the line. It's just